everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Access Blockbusters Pod. Welcome back to episode number 82. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And if you can't tell by my voice, I am a little bit under the weather. And you're going to notice that it's just one of those episodes. I explain in another segment, I think I did it a couple months ago, where I talk about my process for podcasting. And so, long story short, I do record some of these segments out of order because I want to give my thoughts as fresh as possible and leave enough time for me to compile them into the podcast episode. So apologies for that. Because some of the segments in this week's episode, my voice is going to sound like this. And it just is what it is. So I apologize for that. Hopefully, and I'm pretty sure by the next time you hear my voice in the next episode of the Access Blockbusters Pod, it should be back to normal, fingers crossed. So just wanted to give that out front. But guys, big week, right? I mean, here to talk about How to Train Your Dragon, new Superman trailer, Wonder Woman, a lot of things to discuss here as we head into the middle of June with a lot of movies coming up. I have my tickets for Fantastic Four and Superman. I hope you guys do as well. And yeah, let's dive in. So if you haven't subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, if you're listening or watching on YouTube, thank you so much. But if you could subscribe, that would mean the world to me. We're on the road to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and it would really mean a lot if you guys could hit that subscribe button. It would really mean a lot. And if you guys are interested, like I've been saying, the podcast is fully released ahead of all the segments and even the YouTube version of the podcast. The audio-only version in full is released every week, Saturday mornings, U.S. time. And so if you're interested, Overcast, I always say Anchor. It used to be Anchor. That's why I always get tripped up. Overcast, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, the podcast will be up Saturday mornings in full. So if you're interested and don't want to wait for all the segments, then feel free to check it out there as well. And guys, that will do it for the intro. Let's get into this week's topics. Alrighty guys, well, would you guys be surprised if I told you Ironheart was coming out in literally 2 weeks? Less than 2 weeks? 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks. Just about 2 weeks. Maybe by the time you're listening to this podcast, maybe about a week. It's coming soon. And there has been, dare I say, negative fanfare around this show over the last 5 years. This show was announced almost 5 years ago, I think 2022, so maybe not 5 years, but like 3 or 4 years ago, this show was announced. And it was going to come out in 2022 or 2023. It was announced to be coming out such a long time ago. And it was finished filming in 2022, I believe, right after Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And then it just went quiet. For some reason, and I'm sure we'll get an explanation someday, not soon probably, but someday we'll get some explanations as to why this show was so delayed and went through such troubles in its production. I don't know what the answer is. I truthfully don't. Maybe it'll come out and maybe we'll find out that this show just really had a bad story or whatever. I don't know. I really don't know what the problem was. Maybe it was the VFX with Ironheart, the suit. No idea. From my vantage point, by the way, before we even talk about anything else in the trailer, the suit looks good, in my opinion, or the visuals look good, in my opinion. So, for what it's worth, if the visuals were the problem, then I think they did a good job. But that's just based on a few shots in the trailer. But anyways, Ironheart has just really, since she appeared, Riri Williams appeared in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which, while I liked Dominique Thorne enough, I thought that the inclusion of the character felt very odd and forced, and so I wasn't quite sure what she was doing there. Regardless, we've been waiting for the show for such a long time, and it's finally coming out. This show, though, has a little bit of an unfortunate situation because it is essentially carrying the torch of the final show to come out that is of the Bob Chapek era. And I know that Vision Quest is still technically under the mantle of, we're not going to make shows like Vision Quest anymore. We're not going to make shows about titular Avengers anymore, but it was still written and produced and it's being filmed. It's not even filming yet. I think it's going to be filming later under the new, let's really focus on quality. Let's make it so that it's a really good TV show, etc., right? I think Vision Quest, Wonder Man, you're going to start to see all that happening. Daredevil Born Again Season 2. I think Ironheart, unfortunately, just had to be the last project in the MCU that was a part of that regime of turmoil from, I would say, 2022 to 2024-ish, where you just had projects coming out left and right and people didn't really know what to think about it. So regardless of how good the show actually ends up being, I think it's just going to be unfortunate that it is a sort of a representation of that. Regardless, let's just take a look at the trailer. Let's take a look at the show. I would maintain, regardless of whatever you think about the, all that kind of stuff, let's just take the show on its own merits. And so a new trailer has come out because, again, I really think that Marvel needs to, either the show is not good and Marvel is trying to hide it, kind of like Echo, it's not going to lie, or, and again, I liked Echo enough. I thought it was fine. But, Marvel clearly didn't have confidence in it, and it really just decided to hide the show. And I Don't know if that's what's going on here with Ironheart, but they put out another trailer about a week and a half before the show is actually coming out. And the trailer is fine. I think it's fine. Like I said, I think I like the visuals. I like the suit. I like all those kinds of things going on. I like that it's more of a grounded kind of show. I think that it's taking place in Chicago, so I like that it seems like it's going to be very based in the city. It's not going to, like, you know, how Miss Marvel was taking place in Jersey City, I believe. And again, if you've seen my rewatch of Miss Marvel and my initial review of Miss Marvel way back in 2022, you'll know that the parts of the show that I didn't love as much was when she went to Pakistan, because not because I didn't like the cultural stuff that was going on there and whatnot. It just felt like a departure. It felt like a tonal shift in the show where I was really enjoying the stuff going on with her in Jersey City. I think that it, you know, just to spend the whole season with her in Jersey City, and then maybe season 2 she goes off to, you know, worldwide and across the globe. That would have been fun. But anyways, I like that it seems like, you know, this show is going to be planted in Chicago, and we're going to get to see Riri Williams really develop as a character there and see her roots and origins. Other than that, though, I mean, nothing spectacular. You know, we don't get to see a whole lot of Anthony Ramos in this trailer. We saw a little bit more of him in last trailer. This trailer has a little bit more of Alden Ehrenreich, infamously or famously, depending on what you think, played Han Solo, the young Han Solo in Solo: A Star Wars Story. But other than that, I mean, we get some hints here that magic is going to be part of the suit itself, which I think is interesting. We'll have to see how that plays into the just the way that she differentiates herself from Iron Man. Because let's be honest, I mean, I know that she's not Iron Man, right? It's clear, but she is wearing an Iron Man suit. Iron Man adjacent suit, whatever they want to call it. Ironheart suit, obviously. And it's going to have to do something to differentiate itself from just being an Iron Man, not ripoff, but you know what I mean? And I think that that's just unfortunate, because it's just, you call yourself Iron something, right? And it's just kind of there. And I didn't particularly love the AI thing at the end as well. I think it's fine, but I don't know if that's going to be gimmicky or not. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. There's nothing in the trailer to me that screams this is going to be terrible, but there's also nothing in the trailer that screams to me this is going to be something special. And I mean, I've been fooled before. I was really starting to get off board of Agatha all along by the time it reached the last 3 episodes, but the last 3 episodes really did a whole lot to sell the show to me. And so I don't know, maybe the show can be something really good, even though I have no excitement for it in particular. You know, and a show like Daredevil Born Again, I think is, you know, we had such excitement for it. And I think looking back on it, I don't particularly love the season. I like a lot of parts of the season, but as a season of television, I don't love it. So, you know, being excited for something, anticipating something, having good trailers, it's not always going to equate to what the product ends up being. So we'll see with Ironheart. I'm a little worried, because there had to have been a reason the show didn't come out years ago, right? It would have made sense after Black Panther: Wakanda Forever that this is one of the first shows to come out. It was done filming in 2022 or 2023. I don't know why this show took so long to come out, and so I think that's really more of an intriguing thing to me than anything else. But guys, what did you think about this second trailer for Ironheart? Are you excited for the show? The first 3 episodes, I think, are coming out on June 24th, so that's interesting. I don't know. Again, they dumped all of Echo at once, and that seemed to be an indication that they didn't have a whole lot of faith in it. So I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to see about that. Let me know what you thought about the trailer in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, I made the mistake of underestimating Joseph Kosinski's Top Gun Maverick before. And when I even say underestimating, I don't mean that I was thinking the movie was going to be bad or anything. I just had zero excitement, zero anticipation as somebody who didn't have much nostalgia at all for the original Top Gun and thought the trailers looked interesting, but nothing spectacular. I really underestimated the movie. Lo and behold, I went to see Top Gun Maverick because everyone was saying it was one of the best movies of the year, and it was one of my favorite theater experiences that I've ever had. And I will not make that same mistake again. Joseph Kosinski is making the F1 movie starring Brad Pitt, and it looks like it's basically taking the same concept of let's get you as close to the action in Top Gun Maverick's case with the planes, but in F1's case with the race cars, let's get you as close to the action as humanly possible. Let's make it as intense as possible. Let's do it the best that they can do. And it looks exciting. I think that the trailers have looked really exciting. Now, I guess I should say earlier that, you know, while I haven't underestimated this movie necessarily, I think it could be great and all, it hasn't really been at the top of my radar just because it's been quietly going along, releasing trailers here and there. But all of a sudden, the movie is a couple weeks away, and I'm very excited to watch it. And just based on the trailers alone, based on the track record, Brad Pitt, obviously great actor. But now we have our first reactions to the movie, and they are quite good. So let's go through a couple of these Twitter reactions here, these initial reactions to the film, and let's see what people have to say about it, because they are quite good. So this person says, wow, F1 movie is an action-packed, thrilling look at the world of F1 racing with lots of grit. The sound, score, and cinematography are flawless. That's it. That's really high praise. Okay, moving on here. Let's move on to this reaction. The F1 movie is so freaking good. It has all the adrenaline, heart-pacing story, and character that completely fleshes out this movie into excellence. I can only imagine how much more I would love this movie if I was a fan of F1 racing. Maybe I am now? ? So that's interesting, because that's where I'm coming from. I'm somebody who doesn't really watch F1 racing, and so I'd be interested to see, okay, I mean, just like how Top Gun Maverick, I wasn't that interested in planes or aviation or anything like that, but the movie made it so intense, and so even for somebody who's not really into that kind of stuff, it made it super awesome to watch. And so I'd be interested to see if I have a similar reaction to F1, because I'm not super into the sport, but I'm very interested in the movie. Next reaction, buckle up. The F1 movie is a high-octane thrill ride. It's one of those films that you go to the movies for. Brad Pitt and Damson Idris are both dynamic. This is Top Gun for F1 racing fans. Truly a racing movie for a new generation. That's also, I mean, that's super exciting, because what a successful movie, in my opinion, for F1 is Top Gun Maverick, but for racing. And I think that that's a really exciting reaction. Let's read one more here. Joseph Kaczynski's The F1 the movie hits the gas and doesn't stop. The races are epic. The sound design, editing, cinematography, performances, and music are all top-notch. You definitely feel shades of Top Gun Maverick in that it plays like an old school summer blockbuster. What a ride. Okay, so guys, I mean, reading these first reactions here, this is basically everything that I could have ever hoped for F1 the movie. I think that, I'm not expecting this movie to be nominated for any Oscars, although Top Gun Maverick, I think, was nominated for Oscars, so you never know, right? You never ever know. But really what I'm expecting and I'm hoping for now is just a blast, a great summer blockbuster, a movie that really thrills you. And what I love hearing as well is that so many people are talking about the sound design. To me, one of the most underrated and I guess really the standout of Top Gun Maverick was the sound design. Being in the theater and hearing the planes, right, and feeling like you're a part of it was really in large part due to the sound. And I think that that's super exciting that F1 is doing the same kind of thing. And I love, again, it's the biggest compliment that I think people can make for this film, that this is like Top Gun Maverick but for racing. And I think that that's super exciting. So I don't have my tickets yet, I think, but I will be getting my tickets soon for F1, because there's just so many movies coming out that I have to make reservations for. But guys, are you excited for F1 the movie? Are you a fan of F1 the sport? And does this make you more or less excited for the movie just based on what people are saying? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, well, it seems like every so often, maybe once a month or so, we do a segment on X actor who we think, or at least is rumored to be in Avengers Doomsday, says they're not in Avengers Doomsday. And today is no exception, because Chris Evans, none other than Captain America himself, or actually, more recently, the Human Torch in Deadpool and Wolverine, has come out. He's doing press for that film. I don't even know what it's called, but I've seen so many press images and videos and clips of him, Dakota Johnson, and Pedro Pascal, whatever this film is. He's promoting this new film. And he was asked, as one might expect, from these outlets who are interested in Avengers Doomsday and comic book movies, if he has talked to the Russo brothers. And so, again, we have to point this out, because the major trades, and I'm talking about the Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Deadline, the really reliable ones, earlier on, I believe it was late last year, reported that Chris Evans was going to be coming back in Avengers Doomsday. I think they specifically said Avengers Doomsday, not Secret Wars. They also reported around the same time that Haley Atwell would be coming back as Captain Carter. Now, both have denied the fact. Both have denied this. But it's all, I would say this. If an actor says, oh, no, I'm not going to be in it, that's not a confirmation of anything, right? If they're kind of like, oh, I don't know, maybe, could be, it's usually a good sign pointing to it. If they deny it flatly, I wouldn't put too much stock into it as well. But it depends, right? It depends on the tenor of the comments. It depends on how honest they're being. It depends on their past track record. If Tom Holland was saying things, I wouldn't trust anything that comes out of his mouth, because he lets things slip all the time. So who knows about that? But Chris Evans, getting back to the main topic of the segment, was doing an interview and was asked point blank, are you going to be in Avengers? Or he wasn't asked point blank, actually. I'm going to read this entire interaction here, and then we'll kind of discuss what he has to say. So this is Screen Rant, who was interviewing Chris Evans. And Screen Rant says, Chris, what's the over-under on how many times you've been asked about Steve Rogers today? Chris Evans says, you know what? It hasn't really happened. You might be the first. And Screen Rant says, I hope you're not going to confirm or deny anything with Avengers related. I think that's a typo there. But I will ask, now that Downey, and the Russos are coming back, as friends outside of as colleagues, I think there are typos here. Or these are transcription errors. Anyways, have you talked to them since they signed the dotted line? Chris Evans says, yeah, I talk to them all the time. It's where Pedro is right now. So Pedro Pascal, who I guess was not there during that segment of the press tour, is filming Doomsday right now, which is exciting. I think it's pretty exciting. Anyways, I mean, it's sad to be away. It's sad to not be back with a band, but I'm sure they're doing something incredible, and I'm sure it's going to be that much harder when it comes out and you feel like you weren't invited to the party. So here's the thing. Because again, like I said before, it's very possible that Chris Evans is just straight up lying. I think that it depends on the type of type of actor, type of character that they played, where that character was in their arc. For example, when Elizabeth Olsen says, I'm not coming back, I tend to believe her more, right? Because she seems very definitive of, no, Wanda Maximoff is done, and et cetera, et cetera. And I tend to believe that more. Give it a couple more years, right? Downey Jr. was the same. For the few years after his character died, Iron Man, and I believed him. And I mean, there's no reason for Iron Man to come back in the MCU post Endgame. But a few years later, he was starting to sound more and more like, yeah, I'd love to come back. And then sure enough, he comes back in the MCU as Doctor Doom. I think Elizabeth Olsen is going to be the same way. Chris Evans, though, has kind of always been of the mind of, yeah, I've been, protective of the legacy of Steve Rogers, but I love the MCU and all that kind of stuff. And lo and behold, he came back as Human Torch. He had no problem coming back as Human Torch. Whether or not he would come back as Steve Rogers, I think depends entirely on the story, because I think he's very protective of the Steve Rogers story that played out in the Sacred Timeline in Earth 616. A variant of Steve Rogers, Captain Hydra, or everything else, Nomad that's been rumored. Maybe, right? Maybe. That's hard to say. Here's the thing, though. And I know the reports that came out a while ago about him coming to Doomsday, the film might have changed. It might have completely changed since then. Who knows? I actually tend to believe that he won't have a big role in Avengers Doomsday. And honestly, the only reason I believe that is because I do think he will have a role to play in Avengers Secret Wars, where, again, I've said this before, every person who has ever come under the Marvel banner, there is a chance that they will show up in Avengers Secret Wars. Doomsday, though, I tend to think while the cast is Herculean, gargantuan, gigantic, I think it won't include everybody. I do think that the cast that was announced a while ago with the chair announcement is not everybody. I do believe that. I don't know if I believe that every single variant or every single character is going to show up in Avengers Doomsday. I think it would make a lot more sense on Battleworld or whatever Secret Wars looks like for those characters to show up. So I think that's what's going on here. So when Chris Evans says no, and I'm going to be sad to see, when Avengers Doomsday comes out and I'm not a part of it, regardless, I don't think even if he does show up in Avengers Doomsday in some capacity, even as a cameo, I don't think he's going to be part of the main cast. And so I think that it is true what he's saying, in my personal opinion, that he's going to see Robert Downey Jr. and the Russos, and he's going to be like, oh, what a bummer, I would have loved to have been there. And that's totally, totally fair. I don't think this precludes him from lying. I don't think that this means he's not lying about this at all. I happen to think that it makes a little more sense for him to say, I'm not going to be in Doomsday, but I do think at the end of Doomsday, whatever is going to happen, it might open up a whole can of possibilities for him to be like, yep, you saw what happened at the end of Doomsday. We're in Battleworld now. Anything's possible. We'll see. He's denying he's in Doomsday. We'll see what happens there. Guys, what do you think? Do you think Chris Evans will show up in Doomsday as Captain America, as Human Torch, as Nomad, as Captain Hydra? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, so we're waiting for Daredevil Born Again Season 2. Obviously now with Daredevil, the original show being canon to the MCU, and I'm presuming most of the other, if not all of the other Netflix Marvel shows being canon to the MCU now, especially with Jessica Jones as well coming on board for Daredevil Born Again Season 2. We're all kind of waiting to see how many of the other characters in that universe are going to be canon as well, and how many are going to appear in Daredevil Born Again Season 2. Now, of those 4 characters, you have Daredevil, you have Jessica Jones, you have Luke Cage, you have Iron Fist. 3 of them, Jessica Jones, Daredevil, and Luke Cage, had series that, at least for one season of their runs, for Daredevil's case, I think all 3 seasons were generally beloved. I know Season 2 people have their gripes with, but I really like Season 2. You can go check out my rewatch segment that we did a couple weeks ago. But, Jessica Jones, people seem to like Season 1 a lot. Luke Cage, people seem to like Season 1. there's an odd man out, and that's Iron Fist. Iron Fist was generally the series, the show that people, while they said Finn Jones, who plays Iron Fist, Danny Rand, was good enough in the role, that people just generally did not like the show Iron Fist. Now, full disclosure, I have not seen actually any of the seasons of Iron Fist. I am currently making my way through the Defender saga for the first time. Other than Daredevil and the Defenders, I haven't seen any of the other shows. We just did Jessica Jones season 1. We just did Daredevil season 2, and I am currently watching Luke Cage season 1, and we'll talk about that when I have wrapped that up. But I have not seen the Iron Fist show, so I can't really comment on the quality there. But I know, having seen the Defenders and knowing about Marvel Comics, that it's Danny Rand. And so it's interesting because people have been kind of talking about for a while, especially also rumors with Shang-Chi 2. People have been saying Iron Fist is going to show up. These scoopers and leakers, supposed scoopers and leakers have been saying Iron Fist will show up. And that's fine and all, right? Because, who knows? Is it going to be Finn Jones or not, right? We don't know. And there have just been rumors circulating about Iron Fist, interestingly enough, for a while. I mean, before Daredevil, it was Daredevil who was in the rumor mill, but interestingly that, Jessica Jones and Luke Cage were not really talked about, but Iron Fist, I guess as a character, had more of a connection to some parts of the MCU, and so him returning or coming into the MCU in a different way as a variant or whatever, that had been rumored for quite a while. And now actually, we have an official confirmation that Iron Fist is coming into the MCU, except it's not really in the way that any of us would have thought. Now, I have heard this as a rumor before, that Iron Fist or an Iron Fist would show up in the animated anthology series EYES of Wakanda. And for those of you who don't know, EYES of Wakanda is not a TV show necessarily. It's going to be 4 30-minute episodes that each take place in a different era, I believe, in Wakandan history, and are going through different escapades and adventures for people in Wakanda, which I think is super exciting. I think that's interesting, although not necessarily on the top of my most anticipated Marvel projects ever, but I still think that watching it will be pretty fun and pretty exciting. That being said, the director of the show, because this little anthology is going to come out in a couple months, I think in August. And so I guess they're starting to do some press for it, maybe. But the director of the show, Todd Harris, is that his name, was doing some press, and he had this to say, which is very interesting. Quote, "There will be an Iron Fist in here, and not the Iron Fist that you expect." So that is interesting to me, because I wouldn't necessarily have covered this in isolation, because it's, okay, news, Iron Fist is going to show up in EYES of Wakanda, if not for the fact that there is a connection with Iron Fist showing up in the MCU, as potentially Danny Rand might return in Daredevil Born Again Season 2. Mike Coulter has recently been teasing his return as Luke Cage, so I wouldn't put it past it, put it past Marvel, for Finn Jones to return in the MCU. But it's interesting that the director of EYES of Wakanda is saying, yes, Iron Fist is going to show up, but not the one you expect. Now, I am not somebody who reads tons of comics, and so I only know comic lore tangentially. So in doing some research for this segment here, I just went on a couple lists and looked up who else has been Iron Fist. According to one of the lists I saw, She-Hulk has been Iron Fist, which if those of you who know what this story arc is, I'd love to hear what this is about, because I have no clue if this is true that She-Hulk was Iron Fist at one point. I have no idea what that would mean. The other maybe more obvious, or maybe not, because who knows how far in the past EYES of Wakanda takes place in each episode. But, the other obvious one that I saw pop up was Colleen Wing was Iron Fist apparently in the comics for a little bit. So, that could be a possibility as well. We've seen Jessica Henwick play Colleen Wing, and so that would make some sense. But other than that, I mean, the other names on the list were people that I haven't heard of before, and so I don't know if it's just another person, another alter ego for the Iron Fist, if it makes sense that there was an Iron Fist in the past. If you guys know about that, let me know in the comments. But I think it's interesting because, I mean, you could just have Danny Rand show up as Iron Fist, and so I wonder what the context of this is going to be, that there is an Iron Fist in Wakanda. And I find it interesting that it's not Danny Rand, because it almost makes me think, and I don't necessarily think that this convinces me that Finn Jones is going to show up as Danny Rand in Daredevil Born Again Season 2. I will say, if it was confirmed that Danny Rand was going to show up in EYES of Wakanda, it almost makes me think that he's going to show up in Daredevil Born Again Season 2 less. And it almost makes me think that, by him not showing up in EYES of Wakanda, but in Iron Fist showing up, that it's almost like Marvel was saying, hey, maybe back off and maybe let us use him for something else. I could be reading way too much into that. But again, I mean, unless there is an Iron Fist that very specifically had interactions with Wakanda in the comic books, which again, I'm not as versed in this as other people are, so you guys can let me know in the comments if that is true. But if that is not the case, I wonder if this puts a little bit more fuel to the fire that the entire Defenders cast is going to reunite in Daredevil Born Again Season 2. Or maybe it's the exact opposite. Maybe, again, by them not including Danny Rand in Eyes of Wakanda, it's like, nope, we're just not going to use the character at all. I don't know. You guys will have to let me know in the comments what you think. If you think that this means that Danny Rand will show up in Daredevil Born Again Season 2, because apparently, yes, there will be an Iron Fist in Eyes of Wakanda. So let me know what you think about this in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, the summer movie season is in full swing, and we have another movie to talk about. It's all starting with Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, and Lilo and Stitch, and now let's talk about How to Train Your Dragon. This is going to be a non-spoiler review for How to Train Your Dragon, the 2025 live-action version of it. We will talk about a couple, I would say, I wouldn't even call them spoilers, but just minor details that if you don't want to know, I'll let you know when we're going to talk about them at the very, very end, but this review really is going to be non-spoiler for the most part, because honestly, if you've seen the movie before, there's not a whole lot to spoil. I'm going to be vague for people who have not seen the original movie, though, just in case, but still, this is not a movie like Inception or a Christopher Nolan movie where the entire movie hinges on a twist and whatnot. I mean, it's How to Train Your Dragon, right? So it's kind of a known entity, but that being said, I'll kind of talk about the movie without giving away too many of the major details for those of you who have not seen the original. So this is the 2025 remake of the animated movie. I almost said live action movie. The animated movie that came out, I want to say 2009 or 2010. And I remember watching that original movie. It was one of the childhood memories, the childhood movies that I distinctly have a sense memory of, because there are very few movies that you just remember watching in theaters and having that experience when you're so young. The first Avengers was one of them. One of the original, or the sequel trilogy Star Wars films, The Force Awakens, was definitely one of them. And How to Train Your Dragon was certainly one of them. It was one of the animated movies I watched, which I watched a ton of animated movies. I loved the first Inside Out. I remember watching Up in theaters, but, How to Train Your Dragon was one of those that I so remember watching in theaters and just loving, and I'd seen it many, many times after that, the animated version, and I loved it. Actually, though, interestingly enough, maybe I was going through my moody teenage years or whatnot, but I don't remember the second and third one that well. I think the third one came out during COVID, I want to say. So I remember watching that one and actually being a little disappointed by it, but I watched it once. It was during the pandemic. It was at home. I don't know. Maybe I'll rewatch it again at some point because, the first two were really good. The second one, I think I saw on a plane somewhere. So if that tells you anything, but the first one I loved. The first one, I just have such nostalgia for. And so when they announced a while ago they were going to be remaking the film in live action, not only remaking the film, the same director, and not only the same director, but Gerard Butler was coming back to play Stoic. And so as far as these live action remakes go, and we've talked about this many times on the YouTube channel, there are two, I'm of two minds of them, right? Not to go into the whole diatribe again. I'm of two minds of this. Number one, yeah, I think we should be a little bit cynical about these because sure, all movies are meant to make money. Let's not pretend that they're not. Even the most artful movies are, I suppose maybe not all directors want their movies to make money, but they all shop them to studios so people can watch them so that the studios can continue making these movies that get nominated for Oscars and whatnot. So it is about money in a certain sense. And, in an interesting way, I've heard the arguments, why is everything a remake these days? And I get it. I would much rather have, a good balance of sequels and original movies and whatnot. The counterpoint to that is that they make, they being the studios and artists make lots of original movies that we just don't see. I'm trying to make a more conscious effort these days to see more of these original movies. I watched almost all the Oscar movies last year and it was great. I loved some, I hated some. So it is what it is, right? And I think, interestingly enough, I myself am actually the target demographic for a lot of these live-action remakes because I grew up watching Pixar films as animated films. And the occasional How to Train Your Dragon, for example, as a film. And, I did not really grow up watching those original animated Disney films that they've been remaking over and over again for the last few years. And so interestingly, a lot of these Disney live action remakes, I've been watching them and going, oh, wow, this is kind of fun. This is really interesting. Only to be told that, no, it's not as good as the original. It's not as good as the original 1990 original animated film. To which I respond, okay, I have no emotional attachment to the original. So I sympathize with your experience, but I can't relate. And I just think it's fun. The 2019 live action Aladdin remake, I had seen the movie 10, 15 years ago. Don't really remember much about it other than the iconic scenes. And I love the live action remake. I think Jungle Book was great. So, I've enjoyed a lot of them. I also have not enjoyed every single one of them, right? And you know, case in point, the cynical side of me also says, well, look, I mean, you might be able to get away with, oh, okay, well, you're changing a lot of the movie and you're going to make it your own and take creative liberties and whatnot. But then you have your 2019's The Lion King, which was basically shot-for-shot remake, but with CGI lines. And How to Train Your Dragon, the trailers made it seem like that was the case. Like this movie, this anime or this live action movie was going to be basically shot for shot. And so it's really an interesting balance of me going in being like, I love the trailers. I love the original. The music in the trailer alone made me a little bit emotional. And yet it's a shot for shot remake. So how do I feel about it? So I went to go see the movie. I know it was a super long intro, but just to give context to where I'm at, I think context is super important to know where a reviewer is coming from before you hear their thoughts. And I loved this movie. And I thought about this, right? Because on the one hand, I think, you know, there's the argument to be made of, oh, well, you're remaking one of the greatest animated movies of all time. Which, by the way, I contend the original How to Train Your Dragon is one of the greatest animated movies of all time. I don't say that lightly, but I think it's true. And sure, you can say I have nostalgia for it, but after watching this live action remake, which was, I'll get to this in a second, very faithful to the original, it brought back all these memories of the original animated movie. I think the original is one of the greatest animated movies of all time. And the argument of, okay, so if you do a shot-for-shot remake of it, how much worse could it be? Fair, except I watched The Lion King, the 2019 version of The Lion King. I didn't love it. And it was a shot-for-shot remake of one of the greatest animated movies of all time. So I think execution is still an incredibly important part of it. This movie is very faithful, like I said. I haven't seen the original movie in a long time. It's been about 10 years, I think, since I've seen the original movie to be able to compare, you know, shots and dialogue and whatnot. I mean, obviously, once scenes start to go, I'm like, oh yeah, this is exactly like how it was in the animated movie. But the execution is a huge part of it. Casting is a huge part of it. They cast this movie so incredibly well. Obviously, Gerard Butler still there, right? He's carrying over, but he still does a great job as the live action version of Stoic. And Mason Thames as Hiccup, I was shocked. I thought for sure this guy was something like 25 or whatever and just playing younger. This kid's 17 as of the recording of this podcast. This kid's 17 and he did an amazing job as Hiccup. I mean, I don't know if he was intentionally trying to channel some of Jay Baruchel, who voiced the original Hiccup in the animated films. I don't know if he was trying to intentionally channel some of him, but I mean, he sounds very similar. The mannerisms are very, just exactly what the animated character felt like. The tone, the emotions, the way that he presents himself, but it's still his own performance. And I thought that was great. Nico Parker as Astrid is amazing. Again, just channeling the spirit of that character. She really, you know, the embodiment of the voice that America Ferrera brought to that character in the original animated film is very much present in Nico Parker's performance. I think the friends, you know, Rough Nut and Tough Nut and Snotnut and Fish Legs, they were probably maybe not as great as in the original, but you know, that's because in the original they were kind of meant to be just goofy side characters, and in this movie in live action it doesn't work as well, but still they were fun. Gobber, great. You know, all the characters great, and Toothless. My gosh, when I first saw the animated or the trailer for this movie, the question that I think everyone had before we actually saw it in the trailer was, how are they going to handle Toothless? Are they going to make him kind of turn it from Lion King animated to Lion King live action, so just make it look like a quote unquote real dragon, whatever that means? Or were they going to stick faithfully to the original or something in between? Turns out very much exactly, I would imagine pretty much the exact same 3D model of the animated character from the animated film. And it's great. I mean, again, I have to acknowledge, right, that I have nostalgia for this. There's a scene in the middle, you guys know what I'm talking about if you remember the animated film, where, you know, it's kind of that big first moment of the movie, right, towards the middle, and it brought me to tears. It was beautiful, and the music is fantastic, and the action is fantastic, but more than just the action, it's not just action for action's sake. And this is just like the animated film, I acknowledge that, but the characters have arcs. But by the time the movie ends, there is change. These characters have changed. They have grown. Every single character has gone through a journey in this movie. And it's amazing. And I get it, right? How hard is it to take a beautiful story from the animated film and just take it and bring it to live action. In that sense, sure, the task was quote unquote easier than another film that had to write the script from scratch and whatnot. And I get that. This movie is not necessarily trying to be that. It's not trying to be the paragon of originality. I get that, and I understand that. But as a film, and as a reflection of the animated film as well, it did about as good of a job of recapturing the animated film to its core, so much so that I would feel comfortable, again, I haven't seen the animated film in a while, I would feel comfortable today. If, let's just say I had access to the live action film in my house, on my TV. I would feel comfortable putting on either one of them, the animated or the live action film. They are, to me, in quality, interchangeable. And I say this because, it's easy to say, well, duh, it's the same movie. It's not always the case. I have to make this point because Lion King, for me, incredibly faithful adaptation to the original. And I would watch the animated film 10 times out of 10, maybe 9 times out of 10, compared to the live action one. Because it's hard. And I get that that's a different story with different problems of CGI lions and whatnot. I get that. But I think that, I'm not sitting here to defend live action remakes in general. I think that I think there needs to be a balance. And I definitely think that if Disney is just going to make live action remakes, then that's not the best thing, honestly. And it's preventing films from being original and then creating opportunities for sequels and live action films for us to complain about. That being said, that this isn't Disney, obviously, but just making a point. But I think that there is a space for these films to exist, right? And especially because it's the same director, and it seemed like he really put his heart and soul into it again, and just sought to bring these characters to life in a different way. This story, and I'm not even talking about the medium anymore, live action, animated, whatever. This story just transcends the medium, and it is one of the best stories I think I've seen put to screen in my lifetime. It really is. It has the right amount of groundedness, the right amount of humanity and darkness when it needs to be dark, right? The characters of Hiccup and Astrid, but Hiccup especially, he goes through a journey, and by the end, you guys know what this means if you've seen the animated film, but even if you don't, he's changed. He's literally a changed character at the end of the movie. His father has a really interesting and yeah, sure, it's been done before, but an interesting character arc that lands him in a place where you feel so good. And Astrid and Hiccup's relationship in the film is so well realized. And again, I mean, huge kudos to Mason Thames and Nico Parker. They really stood out because I thought they were much older actors, and this is a credit to them. I thought they were had been acting for a while, and they were young adults, and I mean they are young adults, but I mean literally Mason Thames is not even an adult yet, and that's a huge testament to his acting ability. So I get it, right? I get it if you want to be cynical, and I get it if you want to look at my top films of 2025 thus far. I'm not gonna hide anything. My top 2 favorite films of 2025 thus far are How to Train Your Dragon and Lilo and Stitch. It just is what it is. I can sit here and lie to you guys and try to look cool and try to be like, yeah, down with the live action remakes. And you guys know I have my problems with them. But what I experience is what I experience. I can't lie about how I experience these films. And those 2 films hit me in such a way, and it makes me think there is a space for them if they're done well. There's another live action remake actually that came out this year. I almost completely forgot about Snow White that I really didn't like. And so I think really at the end of the day, it just comes down to execution, right? They can make as many superhero movies as they want. If they're bad, they're bad. And if they're good, they're good. They can make as many live action remakes as they want. And if they're bad, they're bad. And if they're good, they're good. And so I think that's really, at the end of the day, that's what it is, right? It just make movies that are good, and I think that we'll be happy. So this was, again, I was so happy to come out of this movie as thrilled, emotionally moved, and riveted as I was, and it was a reminder to me of one of the greatest films I'd seen in my childhood brought back to the big screen. Guys, have you seen the live-action How to Train Your Dragon film? If you have, let me know what you thought about it. Let me know if you think it compares to the animated film, or if you still think the animated film is much better. Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, the day has come. In my AMC account, I officially have, it's crazy, I know it's crazy, I officially have tickets for both the Fantastic Four First Steps and Superman. Superman tickets have been on sale by the time you're listening to this podcast, and we have a new trailer to talk about. Now normally, I don't always talk about these final tickets on sale trailers, right? Because usually they're new footage that I don't really want to see, and it's so close to the movie anyways that why would I want to spoil more things for myself? But with these kinds of films, I remember when Avengers Endgame came out, there was that. I forget what it was called, but there was a TV spot that came out to announce tickets were on sale. That to me was the best trailer that they released. It's crazy, but that was the best trailer that they released. So, and for these big movies like Avengers Endgame and Superman, I just, if they're going to say final trailer, I'm going to watch the final trailer. So let's talk about this trailer. And apologies for those of you who can hear it in my voice. It's going to be a little bit weird because in the podcast, some segments, my voice is going to be normal and some, my voice is going to be like this. I lost my voice recently. I recorded a little bit out of order, so that's why that's happening. Apologies for that. We'll hopefully be back to normal in a little bit. Thus is the life of somebody who talks for a quote-unquote living. So anyways, let's talk about this trailer. First of all, just to give a little bit of context here, I'm somebody who there's been this very odd dichotomy of people who seem to love and are so excited for Superman and all the marketing, and some people just hate it and seem to really want this movie to fail and want to see this movie really fall flat on its face. There are really malicious reasons for that people have, and then there are just people who are like, I just don't like it. But the people who don't like it seem to be very vocally against it. And the people who love it seem to really love it. And I have been falling more towards the positive end, but still very cautious. I've seen 2 trailers now. We've all seen those 2 trailers now, presumably. And I've liked both of them. But there, like I've said in those trailer reactions, there have been enough things in those 2 trailers that have made me a little bit cautious about the movie. And I think Crypto is one. I think, and again, I love dogs, but I think that the idea of a super dog just takes me out of the believability of the movie a little bit. Some of the more comic accurateness is a little bit jarring. Like, I can't get over Guy Gardner's haircut. I know they're going to make fun of it in the movie. I know I've heard that before from James Gunn, but still. And then, some of the way that Superman, some of the dialogue is a little bit iffy. The jokes are a little bit iffy, but, the sense of hope and rejuvenation and the epicness and the way that they understand the hopefulness of Superman and the joy, I just, that's amazing. It's great. And so again, I've, with every new piece of marketing, I've just kind of watched it and gone, okay, let's kind of see where we go from here. Let's see what we got. And so this final trailer from Superman releases. And I will say, I think it's probably my favorite one of the bunch. And what I really like about it is that it highlights Lex Luthor. Nicholas Hoult, who has really not been prominent in the marketing thus far for Superman, is one of, I think, probably the best actor, again, not having seen David Cornsweet in much of anything, but probably the best actor that they got for this film. And it's a film with David Cornsweet, Rachel Brosnahan, you got Nathan Fillion and all these other great actors, Isabel Merced, just from The Last of Us. So, a lot of great talent in this movie. But I think that Nicholas Hoult is probably the best actor that they've gotten. And I love that this trailer centers around Lex Luthor because this is a Lex Luthor who is maniacal, who is psychotic, but is intensely smart, I think, based on what I've seen, and really hates Superman. We have not gotten a Superman film that is Lex against Superman in a long time. It's been a while because, let's be honest, the Batman v Superman universe, they barely knew each other when they met in Batman v Superman. And Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, Jesse Eisenberg is a good actor. He was great in The Social Network, but that was the wrong choice for Lex Luthor, in my opinion. And so I love that this is getting back to the roots of Lex versus Superman. It's kind of weird because that scene on the roof in Batman v Superman where Lex is talking to Superman before Superman goes to fight Batman just didn't feel like Lex and Superman. It just felt like 2 people, two people who happen to not like each other. This movie, this trailer alone is Lex versus Superman, and I love that. I love that they're really opposing forces, and I think that the other scenes with Superman flying, the action looks really good, although. And we'll get to some of my things that I'm still a little bit hesitant on, but the action looks great. But some of the scenes, again, in the very last shots with the flying, the POV flying, it's not my favorite. I would prefer, honestly, the Man of Steel kind of flying, where it's more a little bit zoomed out, instead of the whole almost handheld GoPro kind of flying. But anyways, it's all sort of minor nitpicks here. But the action looks great. I love the interactions between the characters. We get to see a little bit of Guy Gardner talking with Superman. I think what this trailer does too, because some of the dialogue is a little bit more, I don't want to say cheesy, but it's getting back to the roots of a Superman that is very of his time. Superman came about in the 1900s, and Superman versus Lex, good versus evil. This is what this is about, and not that Superman is not a complex character, but I think this trailer is really highlighting that this is what the film wants to get at, is that there is a joy to Superman And I think that, James Gunn is embracing some of the cheesiness, and I think that that's okay. It can be okay. I don't know if it's going to work out in the movie, but I think that from this trailer, it does come off a little bit cheesy, and I don't say that as a bad thing. Spider-Man 2 is still pretty cheesy, but it's a great movie. I love Spider-Man 2 with Tobey Maguire. So I don't think that's a bad thing. Couple things. I haven't seen a trailer yet where the whole trailer all the way through makes me go, oh my gosh, this is everything I've ever wanted. Some of the old Marvel trailers, for example, Infinity War and Endgame, right? But it's not fair to compare Infinity War and Endgame's trailers to this. But couple things. The joke at the end where Superman's talking to Mr. Terrific, it's fine. He's like, I'm doing important things. That's fine. Some of the action at the end with him flying around and shooting lasers at all those, I couldn't really tell who he was firing at, but it reminded me a little bit of Age of Ultron-y, kind of way too many things going on at the same time in the final battle. Again, haven't seen the movie. We don't know what that's referring to. I think that overall, the tone, it's there. And I like a lot of what I'm seeing thus far. I like the brighter colors as well and the brighter tone. But I think that, there's just a couple things here and there that make me go, we'll have to see how that's executed on the big screen. So I have a whole, not list, but I have a few things in mind when I go to see Superman in theaters, which I'm very excited about still. By the way, don't take any of this for me saying I'm not excited for Superman. I am excited for Superman. I just have some things in my mind as I'm thinking about this movie, as I'm listening to what other people have to say and watching the trailer myself. I have things that I'm curious about how it's going to play. Crypto is one. The Justice Gang, is that what they are? Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, and Guy Gardner. That's another one. The just amount of stuff that's going on is another. So there are just a lot of things going on in the trailer that I have questions about for the movie and how it's going to execute it. But at the end of the day, overall, broad strokes, I think that this movie seems to understand that Superman, at least this version of Superman, is very hopeful. And I'm very hopeful for the movie itself. So guys, do you have your tickets for Superman? I have my tickets for Superman. I'm very, very excited about it. July is going to be fun. Jurassic World, Rebirth, Superman, and then Fantastic Four. Very, very excited leading up to Comic-Con. Let me know what you think about this new trailer in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, well, we are fast approaching the release of Superman, and that means the DCU in terms of movies is officially going to kick off. But not only are we looking forward to Superman, we have other DCU movies that are coming out shortly after. I guess in 2026 we have Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, which I believe is done filming and is coming out in July of 2026, although there are some rumors that it's going to be pushed up to that original Avengers Doomsday slot, which would be exciting. And then we have Clayface coming out later on in that year. So a lot of exciting films coming out in the DCU. And we know other films that have not been given release dates as of yet, though James Gunn originally announced them all the way back, I want to say early 2023, with The Authority, with Batman Brave and the Bold, with is Booster Gold? Booster Gold's a TV show, but there are a lot of other movies, and of course we have other movies in the background that have been reported as well since that original announcement. Bane and Deathstroke. I think Dynamic Duo is a movie that's coming out as well. Teen Titans is a movie that's coming out. So a lot of movies in the DCU that we didn't originally hear about, but were not part of that original announcement, but have since been reported on or announced. And we have another one that is in the works, and this one is exciting, and it's also interesting because of the other projects that have been announced and sort of the context that it's being the other project that it's being released around. James Gunn, in an exclusive interview with Entertainment Weekly, has confirmed that Wonder Woman, a movie of Wonder Woman, is in development as we speak. He says, quote, Wonder Woman is a separate thing to Paradise Lost, which is the TV show. The TV show that James Gunn had announced originally that was going to be about the mascara. And he says also about Paradise Lost, because we haven't heard anything about Paradise Lost, but he says it's been slow moving, but it's moving. So that's interesting. But he says, quote, we're working on Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's being written right now. So obviously, this makes a ton of sense. I think David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers, announced a few weeks ago, or maybe it was someone else, another executive at Warner Brothers, said that, yeah, we have our big cornerstones of the DCU. It's going to be Supergirl, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. Makes total sense. These are going to be the cornerstones of the DCU moving forward. Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Supergirl have all had films announced, at least. Batman Brave and the Bold has not come out, although Batman has technically made his debut in the DCU in Creature Commandos for a split second as a silhouette, but still, the only character that was missing was Wonder Woman, because even though they had announced Paradise Lost, and James Gunn seems to be not super happy with the progress being made for Paradise Lost, but he's working on Paradise Lost, or they're working on Paradise Lost, but that project didn't seem like it was going to concern Wonder Woman too much. It seemed like it was going to be taking place in the past at the very least, or maybe on Themyscira while Wonder Woman is on the regular, I guess, Earth. Themyscira is on Earth. I don't know. It's a dimension, or I don't even know what it is in terms of its placement on Earth. But anyways, maybe it was going to take place at the same time at Themyscira and all that kind of stuff. So who knows? But regardless, it seemed like it wasn't going to be involving Wonder Woman at all. And so we have been sort of waiting to see where Wonder Woman was going to appear first in the DCU. And now it looks like, I mean, she might appear in other projects beforehand, but it looks like she is going to be making her big screen debut. Now, the only other interesting thing of note here that I wanted to point out is that it seems like James Gunn has been announcing a lot of movies, or at least other trade and other outlets have been announcing, other trades rather, have been announcing a lot of these movies. Like, where's the, Bane and Deathstroke movie, the Booster Gold TV show, and all these different projects that have been up in the air and announced. And sure, I mean, we've talked about this before about James Gunn's DCU strategy of not moving forward unless there's a finished script, and that's great and all. Totally great. But it seems like, with all these projects kind of being known entities at this point, it seems like we are kind of in this waiting period of, sure, okay, great, Wonder Woman is being written right now. Does that mean 2035? Does that mean 2028? Does it mean as soon as 2027? We don't know. Because it's just sort of been that way with the DCU. All of a sudden, a Clayface movie gets fast-tracked for 2026, and meanwhile, Brave and the Bold, which seemed like one of the movies that but could have been one of the big standouts in the early DCU, has been kind of delayed indefinitely. I don't think we're going to see Brave and the Bold until 2028 earliest, to be quite honest with you. So I think it's just one of the things with James Gunn's strategy of the DCU thus far, and I think we'll have to see when this Wonder Woman film will be released. If it's being written right now, it seems like it's also kind of being put on this fast track as well, and that might be a good sign. That might be a good sign. It might be it might just be an indication that it's still a work in progress, and we won't know, at least until the foreseeable future, when this movie will come out. And also casting wise, because it seems like Diana Prince is not going to be one of the characters where they're going to carry over the casting. I mean, there's been no indication of that, but all the major Justice League characters are not going to be carrying over the previous iterations, it seems like. And again, that hasn't been confirmed. No, actually, I think James Gunn has confirmed that, at least. So while they're carrying over Peacemaker and all those characters from the Suicide Squad and James Gunn's projects in the old DCEU, it doesn't look like that Gal Gadot will be coming back as Wonder Woman. So we'll see. It's gonna spark all this speculation. People have been talking a long time about who's gonna be Batman and who's gonna be Wonder Woman, and it turns out for Superman, it's David Cornsweet, somebody who I don't think any of you guys, most of you guys at least, had heard of before they cast Superman. So I'm hoping at the very least that it's going to be a really, really good actress, and we'll see where we go from there. So guys, a Wonder Woman film is officially in development at Warner Brothers at DC. What do you guys think of this? Let me know in the comments down below. And guys, that will do it for episode number 82 of the Access Blockbusters pod. Thank you so much again for joining us. I'm going to keep this outro short. My voice is already giving way. But thank you guys so much for joining. And yeah, make sure to subscribe. We are on the road to 2,000 subscribers if you are listening on the YouTube channel. And if you're not, if you're interested in hearing the podcast, like I said, in full before anyone else does, it is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Overcast every Saturday morning in the US. So make sure to check it out there. That will do it for episode number 82 of the Access Blockbusters pod, and I will see you guys in the next one.